Hey everybody, Forrest back with you from Life Assist, clinical product specialist and licensed paramedic. And today's training is going to be electrodes versus defibrillation pads and what's the difference, okay? Got a nice table full of stuff here. I got my co-host Ambu Man with me, and we're going to go through this. So, I'm going to start with electrodes, okay? What are electrodes? Basically, electrodes are small little adhesive patches, okay, and they're placed on the chest. This is an example. 1, 2, 3, 4 placed on the chest. And what it does is it allows us to monitor the electrical activity in a person's heart, okay? So, why is this important? Very important to paramedics and clinicians in EMS, because based on what we see on the monitor, which is going to show us the readout, we can determine if they're having some sort of cardiac event and we need to intervene. Now, what I showed you basically, there's different types of like ECGs we can do with the electrodes. There's very simple ones that give us one couple views, and then we can add more electrodes to get more views so we can really diagnose what's going on in the heart, okay? So how do they read the electrical activity? Well, the electrodes, once they're placed on the body, they're connected to the ECG wires, and then that's connected to the monitor, and that's what gives us the readout. Okay, so that's pretty much how it works, and we're going to show you some examples of that a little bit later on. Okay, so how does a clinician know what they're looking at? You know, who basically uses these? Well, I would say most of the time it's going to be paramedic level. Some advanced EMTs out there might have some cardiac training where they know how to read different rhythms and strips, but mainly I'm going to say it's a paramedic level skill to determine what the heart rhythm is and what is exactly going on, okay? All right, so let's take a quick look at them. First of all, what are they made of? There's a lot of different materials out there. The most common ones that I see are going to be the cloth, and then there's foam. Okay, so that's the material they're made out of. Most of the electrodes out in the field are going to have this snap style connector, which I'll show you. But if for some reason your customer has a different type of connector, we do have the ability to get those. But most common in EMS is going to be the ECG wires with the snap, and they snap right on there. Super easy to do. Okay, so how do they stick? How do they stay on the patient? A lot of different types of adhesives. Common we're going to see out there is gel. Gel is supposed to give you the best adhesive and also the best like electrical readout, the best conduction, okay? So there's wet gel, solid, sticky gel, adhesive gel. Yeah, I didn't even know there was that many gels, but there's a lot. Okay, and then how about sizes? So can these be used on little guys? Absolutely. The thing to remember about electrodes is, in the end, an electrode is an electrode. No matter what size, no matter what shape, they're all going to do the same thing. Okay, they're all going to give you that readout. Okay, but they do make smaller sizes, and we'll show you little teeny guys, and those are going to be for your infants and your neonates. The rest of the, say, adult and pediatric sizes, those are all going to sort of be relatively the same size, okay? And then finally, how are they packaged? Well, packaging has a big array. You can get small packs where there's only 4 or 5. You can get bigger packs where we're talking 20, 25 in a pack. And then you can go up to even 50 plus into a pack. It just depends on what your customer wants. Some people like the smaller packs because, as I'm knocking everything over, because there's less potential for them to dry out if they're in the rig a lot. Other people that have super busy systems, they might like the pack with a lot of them because they're going to go through them really quickly. Okay, keep in mind brand names. We got all of them. There's generics available. Whatever adhesive electrode you need, we got it. Okay, so that's a brief overview of electrodes. Now we're going to turn our attention to defibrillation pads and how they are different from electrodes. Okay. Moving on now to defibrillation pads. So what are defibrillation pads? Basically what they are two pads, as you can see right here. They are placed on a patient's chest, and what they do is they can determine electrical activity that's going on in the heart and also treat life-threatening cardiac emergencies, okay? So that's basically what they are. Now, they also monitor ECG activity on the screen. So you can see that ECG readout with defib pads as you can with the electrodes that we talked about earlier. So this is a part that I want to explain. These two terms, electrodes and defib pads, can be used kind of one and the same. So you might have a customer that's asking for electrodes and you're thinking he's asking for these, but he actually might be asking for those. So make sure that you clarify when your customer asks for electrodes if he wants the electrodes that treat patient emergencies or just monitor their ECG activity. Okay, super important, happens all the time, really confusing. Okay, so let's talk about the different types of pads. Number one, there's AED pads, okay, and then there's regular cardiac monitor defib pads. AED pads shock only, okay? They only provide a shock to a patient, okay? The way it works is that the person using the AED, when they attach the pads, they do not have to analyze and determine what is going on in the heart. The AED does it automatically. These particular pads, most of them typically use what's called smart technology. Smart technology is where the computer inside the AED and connected to the pads can read the heart activity and prompt you or the user when a shock is needed and if a shock is not needed.
Push harder. Push harder. Good compressions.
So basically the AEDs really require no training whatsoever. Anyone can turn it on and it's good to go. It'll do the job. Another thing that smart pads technology does is it keeps an eye on the pads, make sure the adhesive is not drying out. It also makes sure the connection is good. So basically it pretty much takes care of itself, okay? The big three that we sell, Zoll, DefibTech, and Philips, I should know that, they all typically use some sort of smart technology. The key thing to remember when buying AED pads, that you want to stick with brand names. There are a few generics out there that will work with the AEDs, but the thing about the generics is that they won't have that smart technology, and some of the features that we just talked about might not be included. So the rule of thumb is stick with the brand names when it comes to the AED pads, okay? All right, so let's move on to now defibrillation pads for the cardiac monitor. So we just talked about smart technology. Smart technology is not really needed when it comes to defibrillation pads for cardiac monitors. And the reason is because the user, the paramedic, the clinician, they're the ones that are going to put the pads on and look at the monitor, look at the readout, and they're going to be the ones controlling whether or not the patient is going to get a shock, okay? The computer's not really going to do it for them. They're going to determine, right? Another thing about defib pads used with cardiac monitors is that they can do a couple other interventions, treatments. One is called pacing, where the heart's too slow, and the other one is called cardiovert, where the heart is too fast. So unlike the AED that shocks only, these can do 3 life-saving cardiac interventions, okay? So that's pretty much a big difference. And now, when it comes to brand names and generics, we do offer both. You won't lose any of the features using the generic or brand name pads on a cardiac monitor. So I've got a few out here. We got the Physio LifePak 15, we got the Philips Tempest, and then the Zoll ones, those are not for the cardiac monitor, but those are for the AED, but just to show you the brand name Zoll pads. And then below here, I've just brought out a couple generic versions. HeartSync is probably one of our lowest cost defib pads that we sell. This one's particularly has a leads out feature, and it's for the Zoll X series. Then we have Kendall, which is what good old Ambu Man's wearing, and that's generic, used for the Physio Life Pack. And then I got another brand over there that is again used for the Zoll cardiac monitors. So we got lots of options available depending on what your customer likes and also depending on cost. Okay, so that's pretty much an overview of the pads. Let's talk a little bit about customer questions that you can ask. Number one, are they BLS, ALS, or both? That's going to determine whether they use big cardiac monitors or AEDs or possibly both. So that'll determine what kind of pads that they're looking for. Do they like generic? Do they like brand name? Just depends. Some people like to save money. Some people want to stick with the brand names. And then questions with electrodes, pretty simple. I think that most biggest questions is the pack size they like, what kind of cloth do they like? Do they like the foam? Do they like, is there a specific gel they like? Do they use the pediatric small guys? Some people like bigger pack sizes because they run a ton of calls and they tend to be a little bit cheaper and they go through them really quick. Other people don't run as much and they don't want them to dry out, so they stick with the small packs. One last thing about defib pads that we could talk about as far as a preference for customer is, do they want the leads in or leads out? The big thing here, leads out, is it's that they can pre-connect it to the monitor, so it's that much quicker to get a shock off for a patient that needs it. Other people are not too worried about that. They feel like they can just rip it open and plug it in really, really quick. Okay? All right, so that wraps up electrodes versus defib pads, what the difference is. Thank you for watching, and don't forget about my reference doc. All this stuff is in detailed information, and of course you can call products if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. As always, Ambu Man, thank you as well. Talk to you guys soon.